Good morning, good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the new ROI of business travel. We're going to go ahead and start on time, so thank you for joining us. My name is Kevin Fleece. I'm an advisor to Grasp, and earlier in my career, I was the CMO over at GBTA. Over the last 20 years, I've worked across the travel tech landscape, supporting corporate travel teams and suppliers alike. And today I'm going to guide the conversation, but my goal is to really let our great panelists talk to each other as much as possible. I've got a lot of questions, and hopefully you will as well. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And at the end of the webinar, we will get to all of the audience questions. So with that, I'd love to introduce our panel. Joining me today are Jenny McClintock, who is the Travel and Expense Manager at Valvoline Global Products, along with Mike Favicchia, who is the Senior Analyst for Travel Services and Corporate Sourcing at Sony Pictures Entertainment, and Mike Duffy, who is VP of Products and Innovation at Grasp Technologies. Welcome to you all. Thanks for joining us today. Before we start, Jenny and Mike F., if you could tell us a little bit about your travel programs, how they're structured, what makes them unique, I think that would be helpful context and also very interesting for the audience. So Jenny, let's start with you.
Sure. So I am, for the last 25 plus years, have worked in a CTD environment. So at Valvoline Global Products, we are a corporate travel department that I am responsible for our global travel and expense, but my CTD runs tickets specifically for US and Canada employees. And then outside of US and Canada, we actually use multiple TMCs for our regions that are global.
Thank you. That's great context, Jenny. And Mike, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about your program at Sony?
Yeah, so I think we are very similar to how Jenny's program is structured, where we're also a CTD here in North America, and we service our travelers here in the US, Canada, Mexico. And then for the rest of the world, we have contracted with a couple of global TMCs as well for our other regions around the world.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So Valvoline and Sony, obviously household names, but Mike Duffy, there may be some folks on the call who may not be familiar with Grasp. Can you share a little bit about the company and where Grasp fits into the travel ecosystem?
Sure, sure. As you said, some may know of Grasp and some may not, but for those that don't, Grasp works with corporate travel programs and TMCs to bring booking, payment, financial data together in one place. In addition to the data consolidation and expertise, on top of that platform, we've also enabled analytics and virtual payment and some other additional products to help manage the travel program. My role is VP of Product and Innovation, which is to help design products for programs so that they can not just see their data, but actually act on it. And I focus on turning that unified data into practical insights.
Thank you. Thanks to the three of you. So that's great intro. And this is largely going to be a PowerPoint-free webinar today. So with that, let's do a quick level set before we get into the questions. So today's webinar is really about talking about ROI and not really debating about whether travel is worth it. What we really want to do is focus on three things: reset how we think about ROI in business travel. We want to, secondly, talk honestly about where we think value is hiding and how we can uncover it and why most programs miss it. And of course, share some real world lessons from these corporate teams who have moved beyond basic reporting. So with that, let's jump in. So this topic of business travel ROI has been around as long as I can remember. And it seems like everyone has a slightly different definition, interpretation of what ROI is. So Jenny, let me start with you. When you hear the phrase ROI of business travel, what do you think of?
I mean, for me, I think of how does a well-managed travel department justify their spend, right? There's so many layers to the ROI business travel. Obvious ones I can think of like negotiated rates, policy compliance, advanced purchase. Those are the obvious ones I always think of. But I'm also spending a lot of time talking about how important it is to have consolidated data in like one portal, and then making sure like my employees are booking through the required channels, because if they're not booking through required channels, then we don't have that visibility that we need. I'm also responsible for duty of care, so having everybody going through that one portal is super important.
I really like that definition because what you've done there is you've really expanded ROI beyond just price and cascaded it into control and compliance, and as you said, duty of care. Um, and I think that's already a more mature and refined definition than what you often hear, which is, hey, did we get a good rate? So, Mike Favicchia, does that line up with what you see at Sony, or do you think ROI breaks down in a different way?
Yeah, so for us, I agree with Jenny on the value of the data consolidation, especially the way in which our programs are structured, because we do utilize more than one TMC outside of the US. You have obviously different operating procedures for each company, and in turn, they provide you with different types of reports. So it's really important to be able to consolidate all that data into one global database, so to speak, so that you can slice and dice the information in a way in which you can strategically negotiate better deals with our vendors. So really, the value proposition for me, and as an analyst, it's data, and so we try to get our data as clean as possible into Grasp, so that we can provide our sourcing analysts with the tools that they need to go to our partners and say, hey, we need to negotiate better rates based on this data.
So it's really interesting. It's about not just it's about what you can do with the data, right? And it's not just about the reports you generate, but it's how you're using it effectively. And what I heard you say was it's about leveraging that into things like negotiation leverage with suppliers, and a lot of that is only made possible if you have the data. So, Mike Duffy, let's talk about that from your seat because you have a perspective across a lot of different organizations that you work with. Are customers still asking, are they asking the right or the wrong ROI questions, or is the data just lagging? Is it behind the reality of their programs? How do you see it?
Yeah, it's interesting that it's kind of evolved over time. From our seat, we're seeing customers actually starting to ask better ROI questions. And so those that have newly introduced into Grasp, and what we see is that the data is not really designed to answer the previous question, the newer questions rather, on ROI. And so the questions have kind of shifted from, did we just save money? Like, what does that look like? To things where, like questions like, where are we exposed? Where are we losing control? Where is there misalignment of the data that's creating friction between, my travel department, my finance folks, procurement, et cetera? And so the challenge is that most of the travel data was built on transactional reporting, like bookings, tickets, expenses, and not explaining behavior, compliance, or operational friction. So when travel programs, they're doing the right things, the data doesn't tell the full story. And that gap is where the ROI gets oversimplified or maybe misunderstood. It's fragmented, sometimes missing context, and needing to explain why something happened, not just what happened. So it's less that customers are asking the wrong questions. It's just the data hasn't caught up to how mature they're thinking about ROI.
I think that's a really important distinction. And it's like you said, the thinking has matured faster than maybe the infrastructure or the data itself. Um, and And it sounds like ROI in many cases is just being measured through a somewhat outdated lens. It's not keeping up with how people are thinking about it today.
Right.
Um, so that kind of gets to our second theme to uncover, which is where is ROI hiding? Like, how do we uncover it? Where do we find it? And Jenny, you've been using Grasp. Have you been able to find or uncover hidden savings or unlock new opportunities in your travel program?
Yeah, I mean, we've been a partner of Grass for a lot of years, but recently, in the last couple of years, we moved to a data consolidated site for Grass, meaning I not only is it my CTD data in this site, then I'm starting to bring in the TMC data as well. Not I don't have all of my TMC data. That is definitely an objective for 26. But moving to that data consolidated site is such a time saver. I was having to jump around to multiple TMC reporting portals to find the data that I needed. Some of the TMC reporting portals just doesn't have the capacity of the number of reports that are offered from GRASP. So it's a huge time saver. Another area that I started recently, I do a scheduled batch report daily on airlines. We're in a couple of the airlines. I'm able to get airline commissions still, if you can believe it. But so it was tough to manage that because you have people booking through Concur, you have people booking through different agents, and Concur, we can't configure it properly to get those commissions. So I have a daily report sent to me of airlines that we are able to get commissions so we don't leave money on the table. So I just check those every morning and make sure that we're retaining the commissions that are due to us. As a CTD, that's very important to keep your commissions. And then another report I was thinking about, it's more on the kind of on the duty of care side. Another area was hard to manage was number of people on a flight, right? We have a policy around restricting a certain number to each flight. And when people are booking it in all different sources, it was hard to manage that. So every morning I have a daily batched report sent to me of any time that we're starting to get more than like 3 or more travelers on the flight. So just daily checks, and it's sent to me automatically in the morning, and it's a huge time saver.
Well, we were talking about coffee just before we jumped on the call, and this is kind of like a cup of coffee in the morning. When you access those dashboards, everything's at your fingertips. And what I love about those examples you shared is that they're not theoretical examples, right? It's commissions recovered inside a clear reporting window. It's traveler risk reduced in real time. I mean, that's tangible ROI. So Jenny, let me just ask a quick follow-up. As you got into the data, was there anything you found in those reports that genuinely surprised you?
You know, I think I'm going to go back to the data consolidated site. I was really excited to move towards that. I just had no idea how much time it was going to save me. It saves me so much time to have that all in one spot. I can choose region by region if I want to. I can run it all as one instead of having to sign into multiple different portals. I know Grasp so well, like I have favorite reports that I can just quickly go to. It's just the data consolidated site just surprised me how much truly it is a time saver for me. And I'm running reports constantly, so huge time saver.
Cool. Let's switch over to Sony and Mike. You know, from your perspective, from an analytics and a sourcing standpoint, where do you think programs are optimizing and where are they not optimizing?
So for me, it really comes down to seeing the data as soon as possible. A lot of companies think that they're optimizing their data by showing the savings after the fact, but companies and travel managers need to see it when it's actionable, so they can see savers and opportunities before an opportunity is missed. So using real-time data dashboards helps in cost avoidance so that the savings can be realized before it's too late. Such as a post-void window ticket or hotels that are within cancellation policy. It's really important, and we're starting to explore tools that have that real-time data so that we can catch more cost avoidance opportunities. But like Jenny, we also run a daily report of everything that was issued the previous day. And we run through that report and make sure that there's no anomalies. If we see a ticket that may be a little more expensive than we think it should be, we'll go ahead and either see if we can price it down or ask the traveler to take an alternate if there's a significant savings, so that we can catch that savings before the window closes.
It's a great point. The timeliness of the data is huge. One thing you haven't mentioned, Jenny or Mike, is the term leakage. Maybe it's been implicit. So I want to pause there and ask about leakage if I can for a minute, since we're talking about where ROI is hiding. And leakage is one of those words that gets thrown around all the time in the travel space. And it can mean so many different things. It can mean non-compliance. Sometimes it's about people booking outside the channels. Sometimes it's just missing out on your supplier share. Mike Favicchia, let me come back to you. What are you doing today to monitor and address leakage? How do you think about it?
So we do have some leakage in our program, but it's acceptable to us due to our business model. We have, as an entertainment company, we have several subsidiary companies that either they're wholly owned or they're joint ventures, or we've acquired them but haven't fully integrated them into all of our systems yet. And so those companies are allowed to continue with their current travel booking processes. They're able to, we give them access to our negotiated rates, and their preferred agencies are allowed to use our rates. We've given them that permission, but we are getting that data back in the form of data feeds from the TMCs that they're working with. We also use data that's captured on our Amex spend statements, because everything that we do is on an American Express credit card, whether it's a corporate card or a purchasing card. So we lean into our Amex statements as well, and our sourcing people, who are the ones that go to our vendors and negotiate on our behalf, are the ones that compare the data that is captured post-ticketing to what's on the Amex spend statements. And so that gives us a more holistic view of what we're spending and where our spend is, and we can better arm ourselves with negotiating power.
Jenny, thank you, Mike. And Jenny, same question for you. And thinking about Valvoline on the leakage side, what are you guys doing to kind of monitor and address that?
Oh, the invisible spend. That's what we call it, the invisible spend. So, it drives me nuts. Like, it's an area that I think that we can do so much better on. For the US and Canada, we've given them the resources that they need to book through the appropriate channels. And so the leakage that we have when it comes to our CTD is more legit. Like, they're booking, directly for a meeting or a conference or rates lower than what we can get. But we use AI. So I'm going to put my expense hat on for a second. So I manage the
Bingo.
corporate cards. Yeah.
I'm just saying bingo. You're the first person to mention AI. You get the bingo stamp. Okay.
So, I also manage the corporate cards and the expense side. So we have a platform or a tool that we use that audits all of our expense reports. And so when they're booking outside of the required source, it flags. So, we use that as an opportunity to educate and understand why it was done that way, remind them of the policy and the reasons, not only for, the possible loss of negotiated rates and policy compliance, but the sheer visibility of not knowing where they're at if they're booking outside of the system. So we're not always catching it before, but we are, monitoring on the back end. And then, like what Mike said as well. So, I see a lot of the leakage more on the outside the US and Canada in more of our global regions that we're really focusing on. But I pull the data a lot from our Citibank reporting. when I want to see true spend. So I will refer to that spend as well, pulling that from Concur. That helps as well to kind of compare the two.
So what I'm hearing is that a lot of the teams are doing the right work, but they're doing it sometimes with incomplete data or data that lags. And you all are doing a lot to make sure that you have expense, T&E, travel, TMC, all of the data in one place. It's, coincidentally, just this morning, GBTA shared a story in their daily news brief on how travel managers are struggling to access and use data. The study cited a report that showed 42% of corporate travel managers struggle to access data and only 16% use the data extremely well, which I think is a great segue into our third conversation around fragmentation. This is another term that topic that's talked a lot about in the travel space, the fragmentation of travel systems. What I mean here, though, is about how data kind of sits in different silos and different systems. And I think Jenny and Mike Favicchia, you've already touched on this a little bit. But that fragmentation can make it very difficult to get to a single version of the truth when it comes to travel. So, Jenny, I'll come back to you. Uh, if you could talk a little bit about that, let's talk about this idea of travel truth. And what is travel truth? Does it exist? How do you define travel truth at Valvoline Global Products?
How do I define travel truth? I guess it's like, I think you hit on it. It's like that one source of truth, like who's traveling? How are they booking it? What's the cost? Where are they? It's like, but we're in my organization, I think we're really aiming towards moving towards the right direction, but like we have a lot of work to be done. We hit on it a little bit. I have a few regions that are working with TMCs that their data is not flowing into GRAS, so I don't have that full visibility. That's going to change. That is definitely happening this year. We have some areas of the world that aren't yet on corporate cards, right? So a lot of questionable, like we can't audit it properly, too much out of pocket, like certain things that need to be fixed around the globe. So there's gaps that we're actively working on getting those fixed, but we are aware of them. And, having that data and going back to that, having that data in one source is just, that's the travel truth I want to get to. I want it to all be in one platform, and we could refer to that platform whenever we're having to pull data or reports or do negotiated rates. Like that's the goal of where I'm heading towards.
Yeah, and a single version of the truth that it goes beyond just costs. It goes into safety and visibility and compliance. Mike, do you define travel truth similarly or a little differently at Sony Pictures?
Yeah, similar, but also different. I had to think about this question a bit when answering because I wanted to really, kind of dig into what it definitely means for us. And so when I think of travel truth and for what it means for Sony Pictures, is that it's an accurate and policy aligned and financially substantiated record of business travel. And that reflects the real purpose, the cost, and the compliance status of each trip. And I think that can be centered around three pillars. You can have financial accuracy, policy compliance, and also operational transparency. Since our team is a part of procurement, we can further define it as a single source of truth for business travel data by ensuring every trip is financially reconciled, policy compliant, and also commercially optimized for us.
Mike Duffy, does truth differ across corporate teams? And what I mean by that is like when you think about different functions that play a role in managing, have some hand in the travel program, finance, travel itself, procurement. I'd love your reaction. Why does fragmentation make ROI so hard to prove?
Well, so to answer the first part of your question, yeah, so the truth, it does differ because, we consolidate all this data, we see the differences, and it can be for multiple reasons. Data inherently can have incomplete, inconsistent, or conflicting data. Booking data may not line up with the payment. finance systems don't always reconcile to the TMC report. And we often see this in data consolidation where different regions, we're pulling in the data and they're kind of telling different versions of the same similar story, but it is a different story. And so when that underlying data isn't trusted, ROI becomes harder to explain, to defend, especially to like finance or leadership. And so to fully answer your question, the truth does differ, whether it's finance, travel, procurement, and it's not because anyone's doing bad work or anything like that, but those systems don't easily talk to one another. And when they do, sometimes it's only partial. The data is only partially flowing through. So it's kind of like, three different teams. If I just use those three as teams, they're looking at the same trip. Perhaps they're looking at one trip. They're looking at it from different lens, different data. None of them are wrong, but each of them may not be seeing the full picture. So when data can be consolidated, normalized, reconciled, aligned, whether it's booking, expense, payment, all that good stuff, the teams will stop disagreeing on the numbers. They'll start using them to spot leakage, improve compliance, make better decisions. I'm just trying to frame it back to, what we were talking earlier, are the questions changing around ROI? And so we talked a little bit on insight and, action, but when there is truth, that's really about alignment and credibility. So I think that's quite important.
I think that's a great point. And when leadership sees numbers they believe, the whole conversation shifts from being kind of a defensive, having to prove your point, to a conversation that really helps inform strategy.
Exactly.
So let me pause there and just remind the audience, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A. We'll be getting to your questions here in just a couple of minutes. But let's do a quick rapid fire round before we open it up to the audience. Quick hitters here, practical takeaways. First question is, if a travel program wanted to improve ROI this year in 2026 without rebuilding everything they have, where should they start? Mike Favicchia, we'll start with you this time.
So I would say a best practice would be to begin a strategic review of your partnerships with your vendors to ensure that they're forward thinking and providing you not only with missed savings opportunities, but cost avoidance opportunities. We all sit in QBRs and we all sit and talk about, what we did in the last quarter, what we spent, what we missed, what we saved. But there's hardly any discussion of forward thinking cost avoidance opportunities and where our partners see for us where we can save money. So by getting your vendors to start to think more forward thinking versus looking what's behind us, I think that's going to provide us with a lot more opportunities to show value and provide some savings in our program.
It's a really interesting point because what you're making there, Mike, you're saying that ROI isn't just an internal concept. It's also about who you choose to work with and the data you're able to share with those partners. Jenny, what are your thoughts? If a travel program wanted to improve ROI this year, what's the one thing they should do?
I think they should consolidate their global travel data into like one single reporting portal. So one thing I would say. And I loved Mike's idea as well. Take that one. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've both sort of highlighted consolidation, but in different ways. And that's obviously a theme that's bubbled up in the conversation so far. And Mike Duffy, obviously would love your take on this. How do you think programs can improve ROI in 2026?
Well, I think it does. It may differ from travel program to travel program, but I think as an overall theme, most programs don't need to rebuild, their full stack. If you, just have a quick improve ROI, it's, fixing the quality and the usability of the data that you may already have. And then once that foundation is in place, once you've got, quality data coming in, the fastest ROI comes on just small number of use cases, some quick wins with impact, like catching, leakage early, improving the compliance, reducing some manual work. the key, I guess, what I'm trying to say is like, you don't need to boil the ocean. Just pick one or two areas where better data can change behavior quickly, and then measure the progress from it.
Great. And let's do one more quick question before we open it up to the audience. So, one thing you'd stop doing tomorrow and one thing you double down on. Mike Favicchia, we'll start with you again.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Jenny on this, and it's consolidate your data into one platform. Um, we're seeing now that we have been able to get all of our global travel spend under preferred vendors. We're now able to consolidate that data in the GRASP platform, and we're able to see a holistic view of our program. And we're able to slice and dice that data by region. So if we wanted to just see North America, we can see that. If we wanted to see what Latin America is doing, we can see that as well. And we can also see the different segments of our business as well, because we have not only corporate travel, but we also have the business of making movies and television. So there's production travel, which is a whole different beast from corporate travel. So really being able to look at that data at that high level, but also at a mid-level as well, to see where the differences are in your program. I think that's going to make all the difference in how you're able to really wrap your arms around the entire program.
Jenny, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a broken record, but I'm going back to that again. So, what I find right now is like when I'm trying to chase down travel spend ROI, like the savings, I can't do that when my data is all over the place, right? So I can't fix the data that I can't see. So talking about that, the areas that are not flowing into my data consolidated site, that's my number one thing I'm going to stop doing is keep all of my data so fragmented, and bring that into one site, and then and just continue to double down on moving all of those different areas of reporting into one portal. So it's just too much chasing of the data that needs to stop for sure.
Well, thank you both for that. The audience is actually the headline of the whole conversation, which is it's not so much about squeezing another 1% out of hotel rates. It's about clarity and making decisions from one trusted source of truth. If you get the data backbone right, then you can really start to have some great conversations about ROI. So, Peter, if we can just bring up slide 3, I'll wrap with this. The future of travel ROI, as you heard today, isn't about spending less. It's about seeing more, acting faster, and aligning everyone around the same truth. And as Mike Favicchia talked about the pillars they're using at Sony, there really are a few real ways in which you can track ROI and where it should show up in your program. The first pillar obviously is around cost efficiency, spending smarter through better visibility. The second one you heard about is operational efficiency, freeing up teams, and third, reducing risk by tightening controls. But it all starts with data, and when you get the data right, everything else gets easier. That's what I heard today. Negotiations, compliance, forecasting, even the conversations you're having internally and with your partners. And when you have that in place, ROI stops being a debate and starts being something you can see and measure and explain. So with that, let's open it up for any questions we might have from the audience. Give people a second to enter their questions. And let's start here. I'll throw this to Jenny and Mike Favicchia. Mike Duffy talked about different corporate teams might have different perspectives. So Jenny and Mike Favicchia, feel free to jump in. Have you been able to align finance, procurement, and travel around a shared view of performance? And if so, what's changed once everyone was looking at the same data?
I can jump in. I actually report up through procurement. So I definitely have the support of multiple stakeholders. I think when we have probably in the last 3 years, we've worked closer as a team rather than so separated. So I'm often sharing data between security and procurement and HR and having those meetings together rather than it being so separated. So having the support of all those different areas has really helped move things forward, in my opinion.
Mike, anything to add? Duffy or Favikia?
I
Jump to
Penny
Nope.
actually answered pretty much what I was going to say as well, because our team also falls under procurement, and so we work closely with the stakeholders to ensure that we're spending our money smartly, and we're spending it in the right places, so with the right vendors. So it is, like Jenny said, it's really important to have that holistic view and make sure that you're maximizing your contracts and make sure that, you're not only maximizing your contracts, but making sure that what is being promised to you is actually being delivered. And I think that's a little bit more of a harder task, but it is achievable.
Great. We have a question that's come in, and I'm just going to read it. It says, as we evaluate solutions like Grasp to help consolidate our travel data, how should we assess them and what are the key differentiators to consider? Mike Duffy, I'm sure you'd love to answer that one, but I'm going to give Jenny and Mike Favikia the first opportunity to answer it.
Please. Yeah.
So
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Say, yeah, it's interesting because, we touched on AI earlier, and then we kind of stepped away from that, but we're really starting to lean into AI at Sony Pictures, and one of my goals this year is to leverage AI in order for me to interpret the data better, maybe catch some anomalies that I might not catch on a normal sweep or audit, but also use AI to visualize the data. There's so much that we can do around AI these days, and as it evolves and matures, and you have these, like with ChatGPT, for example, you can build a GPT specific to your needs, and it will give you a more targeted and better results to what you're looking for. So I would say, there are several reports in Grasp that can be used to be analyzed within an AI tool. And that is going to give you a lot of insights that you may not have seen previously.
Yes, and I'm going to turn it over to Jenny. I'm just going to add one bit of comment, and Mike Duffy, feel free to jump in here too. We only have a couple minutes left, but those AI tools you mentioned, Mike, are oftentimes only as good as the underlying data itself. So having trusted data is really important for anything you're doing, whether it's querying the database with AI or building AI agents, and having clean, consolidated data is key. Jenny, I think you wanted to add something to this conversation.
I totally agree with what Mike said. I'm super excited to see where AI is going to take the travel industry in the next year or so. I haven't felt like I've really dug into it that much on the travel side. Expense, I am all in. But the one thing I wanted to just say when it came to when you're thinking about moving towards Grasp for your reporting is I've been with Grasp for a lot of years. And so when there are, I don't know, Mike, you can put the number out there, 400 plus reports out there, 500 reports. There have been several times when I've been asked to report on something that I had no idea how to pull the data. It was, does this even exist? Can I find it? And I wanted to just give a shout out because I have in several instances reached out to the Grasp customer service and said, I need this report to do this. How does this happen? What report is it? Can you make it? If that report doesn't exist, we work together to create it. So it's almost a solution of, please make this happen for me. I need it by tomorrow. So that kind of turnaround takes so much weight off of you as a travel manager. It's not just the reports that are already there. I have several times taken a report and created it to customize my needs. So I think that's important to understand, that that's a capability that can happen as well.
Great. I think that was an excellent answer. You've got time for one more question. Mike Duffy, I'll give you the opportunity. If there's anything you want to add about data and AI, jump in. Otherwise, we'll go to our last question.
Yeah, I'll just mention on data and AI, we've been very diligent on our execution of AI. And I know, last year, I think it was later in the summer, I was, discussing this with some AI experts. And ironically, at that point in time, they were saying AI has lots of great potential. But we also have to be cautious at the same time, because AI is great at a few things, many things. And one of the sort of comments that came back, I thought was quite surprising, is that AI is bad at math. So we don't want to have that problem, when coming to reports or data or anything like that. And so we've been working with AI and making sure that it's telling the truth. And we were talking about the truth earlier. We might want to make sure that it is, not giving any hallucinations or anything like that.
Great. Time for one more question from the audience here. And the question is, our focus area this year is moving from purely reporting on travel spend to building a more forward-looking forecasting capability. I haven't come across a tool that effectively supports this yet. How are you currently approaching travel spend forecasting? Mike Favicchia and Jenny will close it out there. Mike, anything you'd like to share on travel forecasting?
I don't have anything on travel forecasting because that's not really my wheelhouse. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question very well, but it's something that I definitely want to delve into.
Okay. Jenny, anything you have to share on how you guys are handling travel spend forecasting?
I mean, there's a lot of good reports out there. You can do an overall spend to give you an idea of you can do a comparison between current year and then the prior year to that. So I often will send those reports to my leadership teams. We are part of a Ramco, so we're always trying to figure out how to leverage their discounts. So really diving into what our international airline spend has been using the GRAS reports, to see if we can start utilizing some of those international carrier discounts. So, and it's really, I do a lot of forecasting of what has happened in the prior 2 years, and you can pull a lot of that data pretty quickly from GRASP. And then working also aside from GRASP, I work a lot with my vendors directly, airline vendors directly, to understand, the potential of, where are we at today? What areas are we about to go into, and are we ready for those, right? So as we start to acquire or open new areas, we just start to kind of talk about different markets we're going to go into.
Well, I think we're going to wrap it there. So thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mike and Mike, for the great discussion. Thank you all who were able to join us today. Contact information is on the screen. Jenny and Mike Favicchia are kind enough to share their contact information. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to them or to Mike Duffy. We will share these slides after the webinar. And feel free if you want to follow up with any of the panelists. Like I said, their emails are on the screen. Thank you and have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.